Okay, this is the under 10-minute summary of Midrash Tanchuma Shoftim entitled A Divine Relationship Between the Courtroom and the Battlefield. The Midrash starts out with something that seems innocent enough. Uvenei Noach horgim be'ed echad, bedayan echad, ubishalob batra'ah. Right? This is a radical difference between Jewish law and the jurisprudence of other ancient civilizations and even today's civilizations, right? We, in Judaism, matters of corporal punishment, you need two witnesses, while they only need one. You need warning, and they have no warning. You need 23 judges, and they only have one judge. And of course, we also have an extensive system of cross-examining the witnesses, and you can ask minute questions in order to establish that the witness was actually at the scene of the crime. In fact, you may even wonder if these laws make it so difficult to prosecute someone, how in the world would a society function? Of course, the answer is in the time of the Chachamim, according to the Rambam, they did have authority to incarcerate someone who literally got away with murder. And so if they thought they were dangerous to society, they could be incarcerated. And it's also true that you see stories in Gemara which imply that Hashem takes care of those people. You know, the story of someone falling from a ladder and killing someone else, and that person should have died, but he didn't die, and that person should have gone to Galut, but he didn't go to Galut. Whatever, you get the impression that God is taking care of these things. Anyways, I'd like to contrast this radical laws in our Torah to the famous Code of Hammurabi. I'm going to give two examples from the Code of Hammurabi. The first one, it says, if anyone is committing a robbery and is caught, that he shall be put to death. Okay, so of course, forget about the fact that there's no warning. Doesn't say anything about how many witnesses, how many judges. We don't kill in Judaism. It's not a corporal crime to steal. I'm not talking about kidnapping here. We're talking about stealing an object. The next example is sounds very familiar. It says, if a man puts out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out. Now, of course, this sounds like ayin tachas ayin, but the radical difference again is that we know that the Torah never implemented this. There's an oral Torah that was given at the same time, and that's how we determine Jewish law. It doesn't go by the words of the Torah. The Torah is incomprehensible without the oral Torah, without Torah Sheba'al Peh. The point of this Midrash, I believe, is that starting out with the radical difference between Torah law and other systems of law carries through to other levels and other spheres, as you'll see. For example, when it comes to what we call the cosmic sphere, you will see great differences. And I'm talking about the occult, what's known as the occult. The Torah outlaws sorcery, necromancy, divination, and even putting your faith and trust in astrology. The Midrash brings a story of Yanai and Rabbi Yochanan. They were sitting near the entrance of Tiberia. They saw two people were leaving the town, and the astrologer declared that they will not come back because they will be bitten by a snake. So the Rabbanim hung around to see what would happen, and sure enough, they did come back. And they confronted this astrologer, and the rabbis asked the two men, tell me about your day. What did you do today? And they said, nothing different about our routine. We do the same thing we do every day. We say Shema, we daven. And then as soon as the astrologer heard this, he said, Ein divrei astrologin mitkaimen bachem shatem Yehudim. The words of an astrologer have no effect on the Jews because we are not subject to astrology. Of course, this mirrors a famous story of Avraham Avinu, who thought through astrology that he and Sarai would not have a child, because that was a legitimate takeaway from doing an astrological examination of your future. Hashem took him, it says, God took him up above the stars, because God was trying to give them the message: you are not subject to the stars. You're not subject to astrology, right? So now the Midrash has started out with our radical laws compared to the laws of other civilizations and other nations. Now we see that on this sphere also, this cosmic sphere, we are not subject to the same laws that other cultures are. Now we come to something else, the battlefield, right? If destiny is controlled by God, perhaps we shouldn't concern ourselves with events that usually shape the destiny of mankind, namely a war, right? In fact, we do see in Kriyat Yamsuf, the famous quote, Hashem yilachem lachem vatem tacharishon. That was our battle plan. We are closed in on all sides, and yet all we had to do was keep our mouths shut, don't complain, don't ruin it, let God do the fighting. So that implies that maybe it is true. If God is running everything, we don't have to do anything. But yet, there's an issue, right? If that's true, then why is it that we have the famous scenario in the Torah that Mishuach Milchama has to declare in front of the troops who can go home? Somebody just built a house, somebody just got married, right? In other scenarios, and of course, Mi ha'ish hayarei yelech v'yashuv habayta, right? Whoever is afraid can go. And of course, the Meforshim say that these other things perhaps are a cover-up for the guy who is afraid, so that when he walks off, people don't say, he's a scaredy cat. They'll say, maybe he just got married, maybe he just built a house. So, but why is that? Why is that built into the system if we just said that we are, Hashem is taking care of our destiny? Well, the answer is very interesting. Of course, by the way, you could also ask on the case of Barak and Devorah Neviah, right? She told them in the name of God that they're going to win the war, and yet Barak was afraid to go. So why? Why would you be afraid? So the Midrash makes a fascinating statement. It says, right? In the Torah, it says the word Kiteitzil Mechama. What does it say right before that? Shoftim, that you need justice. The judges have to judge and dig in and find out what the true and righteous ruling is. Midrash is making an amazing connection. You show justice, righteousness in the courthouse. I will fight your battles on the battlefield. So now you understand that the battlefield is, in a sense, a courthouse. It is where everything is decided, because as a community, if we have been just in our court cases, then we know that everything will be fine on the battlefield, right? But if we gave in to graft and bribery and corruption, then we're in trouble on the battlefield. Now, what about the individual? That's for the community. What about the individual? Now, that's very interesting. Machlokas in the Gemara. What does it mean when we say Mi'ish hayareh yelech v'yashuv habayta? What is he afraid of? So Akiva says he's simply afraid of the terror of war. Some people, just the sight of a drawn sword makes them terror. But Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, no. He's afraid of sin. He's afraid of his moral failings. It seems that the battlefield is indeed the ultimate courtroom. And as we said, as a community, God scrutinized the morality of judges. But as individuals, we are also scrutinized for our moral judgment. In other words, every person every day is in a situation of making judgments about other people and making judgments of what's right and wrong and how to carry on their life. So those judgments too are scrutinized on the battlefield. So if you are unsure of the morality of your decisions and the way you've conducted yourself with your fellow man and between man and God, it's all going to come out on the battlefield. So you probably are scared to go there. So that's a beautiful connection, a beautiful progression that the Midrash makes from the fact that we have laws that are very different and transitioning to the fact that we are not subject to what other nations are subject to, astrology and trying to bring up the dead, and finally even wars, which are the way civilization works and how nations rise and fall, even that is on a different plane than other nations, because it's actually a courtroom judging both the individual and the community.